Mark chapter 4 verses 21 to 34. He said to them, "Do you bring in a lamp to put it under a bowl or a bed? Instead, don't you put it on its stand? For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. If anyone has ears to hear, let them hear. Consider carefully what you hear," he continued. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and even more. Whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. He also said, "This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up, the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. All by itself the soil produces corn, first the stalk, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. As soon as the corn is ripe, he puts the sickle to it, because the harvest has come." Again he said, "What shall we say the kingdom of God is like? Or what parable shall we use to describe it? It is like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of the seeds on the earth, yet when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of garden plants, with such branches that the birds can perch in its shade." With similar parables, Jesus spoke the word to them as much as they could understand. He did not say anything to them without a parable, but when he was alone with his own disciples, he explained everything. In late October, I went for a medical checkup. I took all the blood tests. For the last 5 years or so before that, I lived in denial. I did not take the medical checkup. After all, I was extremely busy at work. Towards the end of those years, I was in between churches and studying at Knox College. Now, I was still jogging every day. However, I was not careful about my diet. My blood pressure was moderately high, and I was on medication for it. The blood tests returned. My family doctor told me that I was pre-diabetic and my cholesterol levels were high. She booked me for a healthy heart program at the cardiology clinic. The heart specialist told me that I had a 1 in 4 chances of getting a heart attack in 5 years unless I did something about my lifestyle. He recommended that I go on a diet which concentrates on fruits, vegetables, and plant protein. He also recommended that I be a little bit strategic in my jogging on a treadmill. I should do 1 minute high intensity slots. Since mid-December, I've been on this diet and exercise regime. Now, I have to say that I did not set out to lose weight. This was because that if I knew from past experiences that if I set out to lose weight, I would fail. Instead, I set up with these 2 realistic goals. To do the diet and do the high intensity minutes as I jogged on the treadmill. Then, in early March, I went to the cardiology clinic for my second appointment with the heart specialist. I was shocked. Not only did I lose some weight, but my blood sugar and cholesterol levels were down. Now, while I was waiting in the heart specialist office, there was a poster with a picture of a human heart in it. And it said this: "If you don't use it, you will lose it." I guess that on the diet and exercise program I was on, I was using my heart before I lost it. If you don't use it, you will lose it. The picture in my cardiologist's office describes the condition of our human hearts. However, does it also describe the condition of our heart before God? When God speaks to us, do we hear it or do we avoid it? What kind of faith do we have? Do we act on our faith? And Jesus says, if we don't use it, we lose it. Mark chapter 4 verses 24 to 25. "Consider carefully what you hear," he continued. "With the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and even more. Whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. The incident that started my journey of diet and exercise was a medical checkup I had in late October. It was a moment of truth for me when the doctor told me that I was pre-diabetic. My mother died of diabetic complications. I always thought that if I jogged every day, it would keep me healthy. However, I was very careless about my diet. When my doctor told me that I was pre-diabetic, it started me thinking if I could do anything preventative. Before Jesus talked about use it or lose it, he also talked about moments of truth in our lives. God discloses some truth to us out of nowhere. It is truth that is hidden from our lives for some time, and God discloses it to us. Mark 4, chapter 21 to 23. He said to them, "Do you bring in a lamp and put it under a bowl or a bed? Instead, don't you put it on its stand? For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out in the open. If anyone has ears to hear, let them hear." Sometimes God reveals truth in our lives, which might be painful physically or emotionally. How do we respond to this truth? How can we move on? When Eric was 13 years old, Eric became blind, and I'll tell you the story of Eric. Eric Weinheimmeyer is blind, yet on May 25, 2001, he reached the peak of Mount Everest. Suffering from a degenerative eye disease, he lost his sight when he was 13. That didn't stop him. On a mountain where 90% of the climbers never made it to the top, and 165 have died trying since 1953, Eric succeeded. In large measure because he listened well. He listened to the little bell that tied to the back of the climber in front of him, so he would know what direction to go. He listened to the voice of his teammates who would shout back at him, "Death fall 2 feet to your right," and so he would know what direction not to go. He listened to the sound of his pick jabbing the ice, so he would know whether the ice was safe to cross. Like the disclosures from God in our lives, Eric had to accept the reality that he became blind. He did not let it be a liability from pursuing the dream of his life, to climb up Mount Everest. He trained up for it. He listened to the little bell above him. He listened to the voice of his teammates. He listened to the sound of his pick. He moved from disclosure to use it or lose it. When I went for the second appointment at the cardiology clinic, I had some idea that I was getting fitter. I had more energy on the treadmill. I also felt that there was less excess fat on my body, though I did not weigh myself. Therefore, it was quite a revelation when the nurse took my weight and confirmed that I lost some weight. I thank God for putting me on this path of health. It was an emotionally painful experience in late October, yet I knew that God was changing me. He was making me healthier. And this is what, if you like, the kingdom of God is like. Mark chapter 4 verses 26 to 29. He also said, "This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground, night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up. The seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. All by itself the soil produces corn. First the stalk, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. As soon as the corn is ripe, he puts a sickle to it, and because the harvest has come." When we think of the kingdom of God, we do not think in botanical terms, do we? When we read kingdom, we tend to think military rather than botanical terms. Now, the kingdom of God is God's rule in our lives. However, the kingdom of God is more than the rule of God in our lives. It is like a seed that God puts into our lives. It is the seed of the gospel, God's good news. It is God's seed. God puts his seed in our lives. It grows. We go through the struggles of life. God discloses many things in our lives. We use it or lose it. We resolve to trust God even though sometimes, like Eric, we can't really see what God is doing in our lives. We can't see the future. And then one day, after all the strife we've been through, we wake up and we are surprised to see that it's no longer a seed. It is a full plant. Like a seed, God grows on us. Bit by bit, he's changing us to be the people he wants us to be. He wants us to grow from seed to full plant. God is making full plants of us. Now, the hot Ontario summer is coming upon us, and we are going to have some hot days. And we all know what it's like to find shade under the oak or maple tree. And let us read further now, Mark chapter 4, verses 30 to 32. Again, he said, what shall we see the kingdom of God is like? Or what parable shall we use to describe it? It is like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds on earth. Yet when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of garden plants, with such big branches that birds can perch on its shade. Now, there are some Bible scholars who tell us that when we read the kingdom of God in the book of Mark, the Gospel of Mark, we can replace it with the word God. So God sometimes is like a mustard seed in our lives. Without my glasses, I will not be able to see that mustard seed around 3 feet away. Yet the mustard seed is there. I just can't see it. It is the same with God. Sometimes we can't see God, but he is there. And God might look small in our lives, and yet he's doing big things. The mustard seed can grow to become the largest of plants. In fact, Matthew and Luke tells us that the mustard seed becomes a tree. So like in the hot Ontario summer, the mustard seed can give all of us a shade from the noonday heat. The Gospels also tell us that so solid is this mustard tree that the birds of the air can build nests on its branches. So God might look small like a mustard seed. And he's doing big things, big things in our lives. And when he does these big things in our lives, he gives us shade from the noonday sun. He shields us. He protects us. And like birds in the air, we can build our nests in God. And I'm going to read with these verses in Psalm 21, verses 5 to 6, because it talks about a God who watches over us like that big mustard tree. Luke 121, verses 5 to 6. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. I'll repeat. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night.